so I just had my battery die on me, so that's just fantastic. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. I'm Caroline and this is my booktube. So let's do it. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different. I thought I would do like a get ready with me, and that way it's mixing my love of makeup in with some books. And we'll talk about some of the most hyped books of 2020 and whether they were good or not. So yeah, interesting topic, I know. Let's get into it. My skin is already like ready to go. That reminds me. Sorry, let's do this. So, let's talk. 2020, okay, so there was a lot released in 2020. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like 2020 was pretty big for books. 2021 is gonna be even bigger, so yeah, that's gonna be interesting. A lot of like the big names, so to speak, released their books, and they've got more coming out next year. But so I think we can start off with the start of the year, right? So at the start of the year, Cassandra Clare released her new spin-off series. I don't know where I have the book, but she released her spin-off series, which is The Last Hours, and it was Chains of Gold. So she released Chains of Gold March this year. It was the same time that Sarah J. Maas released her new series, Crescent City, which I will go into in a minute. But yeah, so Cassandra Clare released her new spin-off series, which follows Cordelia Castairs. So this series is back in like 1890 odd or 1902 London. So yeah, it's like the follow-on from the Will and Tess's kind of books, those three, the Clockwork Princess series. So that book actually stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 months, which is kind of amazing to think that a book that was released in March, 6 months later, is still a bestseller. And I think it just shows you how much her books just kind of like hit the mark. They're just like really, 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 really good. So next year she's releasing in July her next installment, which is Chains of Iron. And so that was that one. That book was hyped, but it was good. And yeah, like I said, it spent 6 months on the New York Times bestseller list. So obviously this book hit the mark for a lot of people because a lot of people just kept buying it. So yeah, like it was a hyped book, but it like lived up to the hype, so it was kind of worth it. And then the next book we have is Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City. So Sarah J. Maas is kind of hitting the mark with absolutely anything she writes. People just kind of love, and you can see why. Like, her writing is really, really good. Her world building is amazing. And it's just really easy to kind of fall in love with her characters. So I think that's probably why she's dominating, and like she's releasing a spin-off to her A Court of Thorns and Roses February next year, and it's basically, the tours have already sold out, so it's like, it's insane, like really, when you think about it, it's like truly insane. So Crescent City was a new book. So this is actually a book that, while Sarah J Maas was writing A Court of Thorns and Roses, she had this idea, this world in her head. So she would write this on the side. And then basically like a year or so ago, she like went to her agent and she was like, I've written this book. And they were like, yeah, it's really good. And then they published it, but they didn't really expect much of it because they did not think, because this is more adult fantasy and her other books are more like YA and adult fantasy kind of. They're more like a younger kind of age bracket, but this is like pure adult. So they were a bit like, eh. But now that she's like released this and it became such a hit, she's actually going to be moving more towards adult fantasy novels with her new novels coming out. So that's fantastic, which it's good because it kind of touches on deeper topics and things like that. I know she said her new book is going to touch a lot on mental health, a lot of battles that she's had herself, and she's going to put those in with the characters. So it's good for readers, and it really, it's like connecting with their today issues. So yeah, there was that one. And then, so okay, those are like the first two of the year. And then like came like May-ish or like April. And the final book in the Queen of Nothing, the folk, I think it's called the Folk of something trilogy. I don't know, the Air Folk trilogy, I think. Oh, Folk of Air. The Queen of Nothing is the third book in the Folk of Air trilogy. That was released. I mean, I think you guys probably know by now my opinions on this series are just really bad. Like it is just so bad. Like I just don't get it. Yeah, I hated it basically. And I made the mistake because this book came out and it was like super hyped and I was like, oh my God. So I went and bought this book. And then I realized this was the third book. So I had to go and find the other two books. And then I read the first book and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I have just basically committed myself to a whole series that I don't even really like. But anyway, so that was an overhyped book and it just was not the best series, book, anything like that. So yeah, that just, yeah, DNF. No, well, I didn't DNF it, but that just, yeah, it just didn't work. And then we had this book here, The Court of Miracles. Holy crap. Before it came out, it was like June when it came out. Before it came out, right, it had already oversold the number of copies that they had expected, right? That was like in pre-orders. And then it went live in London and people were lining up to buy this book. And like the author was like obviously thrilled, like, you know, any author would be. And I was like, oh, okay, like obviously this book is like so good because so many people are buying it and it's just flying off the shelf. And like the author was like, if we can get like this number of books, you know, I'll come to a bookstore dressed in like Les Miserables garble, you know, stuff. So I was like, obviously, like this is like a really, really good book. Like if people are like going to the effort of dressing up in like period themed clothing, like clearly it's good, right? Right? Yeah, like I thought that too, but no. And so I bought it and I read the blurb and I was like, the blurb sounds good, right? And then like I opened it up and it was, you know, on theme, on point with like 2020 books, and it had a map. Because, you know, any fantasy book that came out in 2020 needed to have a map, otherwise it wasn't a fantasy book of 2020. So it had all that, and so I was like, okay, I'm interested. And I was more interested in other books, so I kind of left that to the bottom of my pile, if I'm being honest with you. And then I picked it up and I started reading it. And I was like, people lined up for this? Like, really lined up for this? Like, what? It was just... And then I was like, is it me? Is something like wrong? Like I just can't connect with the characters, you know? And then I didn't finish it, and I had no intention of finishing it. And so that was that. And that was an overhyped book that I was just like, wow, okay. Could not believe, basically, that was such an overhyped book. But anyway, we move on. So, I read, it was about, yeah, like June-ish, when I read Serpent and Dove. This is another fantasy book, right? So I read Serpent and Dove, loved it. Oh my god. Must admit, it took me about 50 pages to get into it, but once I was into it, I was like, this book is great. So, I read it, and then I was like, oh my god, even better, the next book in the series is coming out in like 2 months. Like, this is fantastic. This is like my life made, right? Yeah, wrong. So the next book, Blood and Honey, came out. And there was like a bit of a kerfuffle with Blood and Honey coming out because like a few weeks before its release date, someone like leaked it. So that was like pretty sad for the author. But basically, yeah, it was like the leaked document was like going around so people could read it before the release date. So yeah, there was that. But I was good. I didn't. I bought the book and I was so angry. It's just, like, it was just 400 pages that could have been made into like 150. And that was like super frustrating because literally like it just was too long. Like it didn't need to be that long. And so yeah, like I did not like that. The more I think about that book, the more angry I get because I'm just like I didn't actually have to read it. Like I could have just skipped to the third book and like I would have known everything within the first like 5 pages of what happened in the previous book. So anyway, there was that. And the other book that I read that was extremely hyped was this one, Linda LaPlante, Blunt Force. So Linda LaPlante's like huge in the crime writing division, genre. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, she's really big. And so I was like, oh cool, like, you know, the next book in the Jane Tennyson series, like fantastic, you know. Yeah, it was just missed the mark completely. Like it was, I think I gave it like 2 stars. Like it was really bad. But anyway, that comes to the conclusion of our story time. My makeup is done. And the moral of the story here is that sometimes overhyped books can just still be shit, and it's just because you get the right words going around, you get the right people interested, that you can make this book into something that it's not. But anyway, doesn't mean that, like, just because I didn't like them doesn't mean that other people did. So reading is a personal thing, and if one person doesn't like it doesn't mean someone else doesn't. But I just dislike reading overhyped books because I often sit there and I go, oh my god, it's going to be the best book I've ever read, and I'm let down. But that did not happen here. Well, it did mostly this year. So let's look forward to next year with some new releases, and I'm super excited to read some new overhyped books and see how they go.